In series of 4 episodes, we will introduce you to the essentials of automatic transmissions. Today, we will look in details into the advantages of modern automatic gearboxes, their general structure, and the modes in which they work. We will go through the symptoms and causes of an existing or forthcoming problem. We will look into what general diagnoses and prevention. Countries, automatic transmissions have been long preferred than manual transmissions. In Europe, their share gradually increases, and with it, the service points and repair workshops. Diagnostic and repair of an automatic gearbox has become a routine procedure. Automatic gearboxes are without a doubt much easier to control than manual gearboxes. Driving in traffic is much more comfortable when you don't have to constantly switch gears. The wear of the automatic gearbox in an urban environment is much less than in manual gearboxes. The driver can drive by placing both hands on the steering wheel at all times. This reduces the risk of losing control in the event of an unforeseen situation in traffic. Security systems like the ABS and ESP work far more efficiently when combined with an automatic transmission. Autopilot has more options controlling the switch to the necessary gear. Modern automatic gearboxes are more precise and more efficient compared to their predecessors, which makes them not only more comfortable but also as economical as the same car but with a manual transmission. In today's automatic gearboxes, the switching time between gears is measured in milliseconds, and it's much faster than switching times in manual gearboxes. The chances of an error during manual shifting are much greater as the driver must periodically perform several actions during the movement, each of which may cause an unintentional mistake. In automatic transmissions, the main program for gear shifting is set before the vehicle starts, which minimizes the possibility of gear shifting error. The incensement of the torque in the automatic gearbox is possible due to the implementation of the torque converter. When driving off, the torque is increased at most. With proper care and maintenance, the automatic transmissions can have a long life, and repair and spare parts prices are gradually being aligned with those of the manual gearboxes. There are several main modes which are activated when positioning the selector lever. This lever can be connected mechanically to the gearbox or assisted by an electronic module which changes the control positions of the gearbox. The main positions are 4. Parking position is selected when coming to a complete stop so that the car is secure. In this position, the movement of the chassis is impossible. In reverse position, the transmission is locked to the chassis and a reverse movement is performed. In neutral position, the connection between the transmission and the chassis is interrupted. Thus, in case of an accident, the vehicle can be moved to a safe place or positioned on a repatriation platform. In drive position, the transmission is locked to the chassis and a forward movement can be performed. The gears are automatically being selected from the transmission control module according to the acceleration and speed of the vehicle. The change between positions must be performed only when the vehicle is stationary. For systems with an electronic module for selecting of positions, there is a protection that will not allow change if the vehicle is in motion. Additional modes may also be available to assist the driver in different situations. In the manual shift or downhill mode, the driver partly takes over the gearbox control. If engine revolutions and torque do not match the gear, the computer may in some cases correct the gear by raising or lowering it. The purpose of this action is to protect the engine. In sport mode, the shifting occurs at higher revolutions compared to the standard. This is particularly useful for terrains with multiple turns and short stretches where greater dynamics are required. In most automatic transmissions, switching to lower gears in sport mode is maintained in the same speed range as in the standard program. In winter mode, the control unit executes a special program for changing gears. In this mode, the takeoff occurs at a higher gear and thus the initial torque is reduced. This prevents the vehicle from wheel spin on snowy or slippery terrain. To get to know the structure of a standard automatic transmission, we're going to take a look at a 7-speed 7G-tronic with 722.9 code used in many models of Mercedes-Benz. We can divide the automatic transmission in 3 main categories: Mechatronic, Gearbox, and Torque Converter. The Mechatronic is the control center of the transmission. It consists of the Transmission Control Module, TCM, the valve body, and solenoids. Its purpose is to control the other parts in the gearbox through transmission oil under a certain pressure, which is fed at a specific moment during vehicle movement. In the gearbox, the mechanics go through into different modes that characterize a certain gear. It consists of group shafter, gear wheels, clutch packages, and seals. In the front is the oil pump, which is firmly connected to the crankshaft of the engine through the housing of the torque converter. When the engine is operating, the pump is constantly feeding transmission oil to the Mechatronic. The torque converter is a fluid-based clutch between the engine and the transmission. It has several main functions. It transfers motion from the engine to the transmission. It drives the oil pump in the gearbox. Increases the torque from the crankshaft to the transmission during the movement of the car. When driving off from a standstill, maximum torque is produced. It operates as flywheel, neutralizing the oscillations and vibrations from the engine to the transmission. In the lower part of the gearbox is the transmission pan and the oil filter. Soft Electronic is one of the few companies in the world which has repair workshops both for mechanics and electronics for certain automatic transmission models. In the gearbox circulates transmission oil, which has three key functions. It provides the necessary lubrication of the moving parts, helps the cooling of the automatic transmission, takes part in the hydraulic system, which mechanically controls the components in the gearbox. The oil has the following work cycle. From the oil pan, it goes through the filter, and from it into the oil pump. The oil pump then forces it in the valve body of the Mechatronic at high pressure. The Mechatronic regulates the pressure and distributes it to the torque converter and the various sections of the gearbox. After that, the oil goes through the cooling system and re-enters the transmission pan for the next cycle. Here's some advice if you want to extend the life of your gearbox. You shouldn't overload the vehicle above the factory limit. For example, when tuning the car, you shouldn't exceed the torque limit value described by the manufacturer. Aggressive driving may lead to shortening the life of the gearbox. In case of emergency, it's not advisable to have the vehicle towed by another vehicle because the lack of active lubrication may cause a serious defect in the gearbox. Transportation with repatriation platform is recommended for this purpose. In winter conditions, it's advisable not to take off as soon as you start the car. You should limit the actions which could cause overheating in the gearbox. For example, when you try to unblock the car in winter conditions, or controlling it on a slippery terrain by repeatedly throttling in one place. One of the most important things is to look for signs related to the incorrect operation of the automatic transmission. When developing any of them, it's advisable to make timely diagnosis and repair if needed. Here are some of the signs. Even the smallest leak of transmission oil can lead to a decrease in the level of the oil. In this case, it's best to have it checked in a specialized workshop. Lack of oil can cause overheating and defecting of electronic or mechanical components in the automatic transmission. Overheating can also occur if the cooling system is defective. This is why it's important to have it regularly checked. Smell of antifreeze or burned out friction plates can also be related to the gearbox. It's unacceptable to have small particles in the oil from mechanical parts and liquids that are not part of the transmission oil composition. The check light on the dashboard for problems with the engine or the ABS systems is not necessarily related to the gearbox, but this can only be diagnosed in a repair workshop. The appearance of unnatural noises coming from the position of the gearbox is symptom of a mechanical problem. The gears should change smoothly. If there is a problem with the gearbox, you could feel jerking while changing gears. You could also feel slipping in some cases. The driver can notice a sharp increase in the revolutions while changing gears. In this case, it's advisable to have the vehicle diagnosed and repaired in a specialized workshop. The appearance of the mentioned signs can cause the vehicle to go in safe mode. In this mode, the car remains in one gear. In most cases, it's a low gear and serves only to move the vehicle to the nearest safe place. From there, it can be transported to a repair workshop. In the soft electronic workshops, vehicles with automatic gearboxes can be diagnosed, maintained, and repaired. It's advisable to have the gearbox diagnosed in the following cases. After 40,000 kilometers since the last diagnostic. in case you suspect deviation from the normal operation of the gearbox. In case you buy a pre-owned vehicle. The procedures which are completed when diagnosing a vehicle are computer diagnosis, test of the vehicle, and analyzing the transmission oil. Under computer diagnosis, the vehicle is checked for stored error codes in the mechanics and electronics. The operating values at which the gearbox is operated are also checked. When testing the vehicle by service technicians, the behavior of the gearbox is being monitored in real conditions. They're looking for signs of slipping or shaking while changing gears. Service technicians may also discover unusual noises that are a sign of an upcoming or future problems. Finally, the transmission oil in the gearbox is being analyzed. A sample of it is examined for solid particles. Afterwards, a chemical test is performed to verify if there's a presence of glycol and other liquids, other than the composition of the transmission oil. Timely diagnosis by a specialized service for automatic transmissions can prevent costly repairs. Following the results of the diagnosis, proceed with maintenance or repair if needed. Maintenance is needed if the results from the diagnosis show that only the oil needs to be changed. The maintenance consists of change the old oil with a new one, replacement of the oil filter and gasket of the transmission pan, reset of the electronics, perform adaptations if needed. Replace of the old oil is needed for the following reasons. The lubricating performance decreases over the course of the operating cycles. This can result in wear of the mechanical parts. The microparticles produced from the friction of the friction plates begin to wear the mechanical components in the valve body, clog the filter, and form coating on the internal parts of the gearbox. Because of the numerous thermal cycles and under the influence of continuous working pressure, the viscosity of the oil changes, and this can even lead to incorrect execution of commands in the gearbox, which will cause slipping and flaring. The change of the oil is performed using a specialized station which ensures the correct replacement of the old oil. The oil filter and the transmission pan gasket are also being replaced. The gearboxes, which have control units, will need to be reset and then adapted. The reset is a process in which the control unit is returned to its factory settings. The adaptation is a process in which the control unit is being programmed or self-programmed to switch gears in the most optimal way given the current condition of the mechanics and fluids in the gearbox. That is why after oil replacement, it's necessary to perform resetting and adaptation. In different models of gearboxes, these procedures are done in different ways. For example, the 7 Gearbox needs about 40 minutes of test drive in which the service technicians perform the two procedures. In other gearboxes, like the ZF6HP used by the VAG group, is necessary to control the unit to be unmounted and reset with a specialized equipment, which Soft Electronic has. The control unit is then mounted back in, and it self-adapts when periodically driven by the driver. A repair is performed if the diagnosis shows the following results. If computer diagnosis shows system errors that indicate a problem in the control unit or mechanics of the gearbox. If there is slipping, flaring, vibrations, or noise coming from the gearbox during test drive. Presence of big particles from the mechanical components in the transmission oil. Presence of glycol or other liquids, different from the composition of the transmission oil. The purpose of the repair is to restore the factory quality of the automatic transmission and its optimal operating characteristics for as long as possible. For this reason, our workshop provides the necessary parts from world-famous companies like Automatic Choice. In Soft Electronic work some of the best automatic transmission mechanics and electronic specialists. In the next episode, we'll get familiar with the way of working, controlling, damage prevention, and repair of the components in the Mechatronic.